All right, back on Chuck's car. So, got a rat's nest here. A lot of people are gonna be like, oh man, that's horrible, look at that disaster. But the thing is, you wanna make sure you have enough airline before you commit. So there's excessive amounts of airline right now just to make sure that we have the ability to test the system. And then after that, we can get our placement. So that's why there's long lengths of wire, and I've got everything just sort of mocked up, right? Got kind of a distribution of grounds here. And then we got the main hot, all the grounds. And then this is typically ignition stuff, or this one might be hot at all times, and that one's usually ignition on. So just gonna touch these against the terminals here, and hopefully the system should power up. And I would think that the pressure switch should tell the compressor to turn on. And this is my first time actually using the Ride Pro E5 system. So I'm thinking that everything should be able to be smart enough to figure it out. What happened? We got it?
They charged it up, but it was overheating, so it's not holding the charge.
So where's my new one? Are they that stupid up there?
Another red top?
Well, it's warranty.
They didn't say nothing about it.
I walked in there, I said, this is a warranty.
Let me call Miss Carla.
Oh.
Yeah, you need to deal with Miss Carla, not the front.
Well, I know, but I think that they're smart enough at least to test a battery.
They didn't tell me nothing.
Okay, no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sorry, Hon. I need to interrupt your...
Oh, it is what it is. Incompetence these days. Anyways, so yeah, as I was saying, never dealt with the Ride Pro E5 system. Mine is completely analog in my silver notch with the old school cool ride setup. So let's see what happens when we put power to the system, and hopefully it all works. Get up the pressure here. Please calibrate the system. All right, let's see if we can get this car to calibrate its air ride. So did have a couple of the sensors mixed up. So right in the air, I guess distribution manifold, each bank, or each corner, I should say. So you can see LR, left rear, RR for right rear, and then the corresponding airline should be going out from either side. So I had a couple of these mixed up. So that has now all been taken care of. The tank is full of air. So I want to go in now at 147 pounds of pressure. So if you go to calibrate, it's not yet calibrated. Would you like to? Yes. Let's see what happens. So what the system's doing is it's going through all of the different corners, front and rear, and it's reading the pressure from all of the pressure sensors. So it's automatically kind of putting some air in, letting some air out, so that way it can get a good feel for everything in terms of being able to monitor. So that way when you're actually trying to set all of your levels according to the pressure that you want, that they're going to be accurate. There we go. Pretty neat, huh? So I've just finished setting up the air management stuff for the Ridetech kit here. And it's pretty straightforward, guys. Follow the instructions, take your time, put on your Teflon tape on your fittings, so on and so forth. And it's pretty much plug and play in this instance. And as mentioned before, air management can be cross-referenced with other types of bags or air struts or whatever it might be. And each air management company has their own bit of proprietary software or a way that they're operating and turning, switching your solenoids to release air, whether it's to inflate or to deflate your bag. This right here would be your main brain. This is proprietary to Ridetech, the GoPro E5. And then you've got the screen, which of course is going to display your air pressures and what corner, do probably your automatic presets and controls and everything else. So aside from that, the rest here is standard run-of-the-mill. You would see this on any other air ride application. So it's pretty straightforward. First off, you've got a compressor here. Here's a little intake air filter guy. Your exhaust is where you're creating your air, and the air will go into the tank. Now this is a one-way backflow valve so that it's pumping air in, but air cannot escape. So when this guy switches off, then air can't be lost and backflow through the compressor. So this guy is really important. On my silver car, the valve, this actually cracked, and I don't know if it was cold weather or what happened, but the one-way valve like busted out of the center and I had to replace this guy. So always be mindful, you need a check valve in there. This is a pressure sensor, so that way we have something that's going to the computer to say, okay, we've got enough air pressure that's been built up in the tank, go ahead and turn the compressor off. Or, guys, we've been using too much air, we need more air, turn the compressor on. So that is the importance of this guy. And then ultimately here, you have this, your output. So your output here is going to run into your manifold that pretty much is the operations or the heart of Air Ride. So each one of these solenoids will either let air out to each respective corner. So in this case, you would have, and all of this is wired on the backside, or labeled, I should say. So you would have left front air up, left front exhaust out, right front air up, right front exhaust out, left rear air up, left rear exhaust out. You guys get the drill. So everything that's happening along these solenoids is letting air out here, and all of these would be the lines going to your bags. All of these guys here are going to let air out, and that's going to purge out of the exhaust port. There's actually an exhaust port on each side here, and there's an inlet or supply on each side. And that is because, we're going from the compressor in here. Now, if we had two compressors, you would have another fitting here, and the other compressor would be feeding air into here. So Castle Customs is running two compressors, so he would actually be running two feed lines into the manifold, and that would just essentially allow more air to be available. You can run a bigger tank and so on and so forth, but that is how that works. Now, on the back side here, these are all pressure sensors and all electronically controlled. Again, plug and play, going into the harness that's going into the brain here, and ultimately, being able to say this is how much air pressure is on each corner of the vehicle. Now, there are analog kits. So my Silver Notch, for instance, instead of having electronic sending units, they actually have a little airline coming out of the back, and they actually go to an analog gauge that has a little airline going through it. So fully mechanical. Now, the only downfall to having those little air lines going is it's an opportunity if something happens to one of those little air lines, gets nicked, it cracks, any of those things, well, that's going to be a spot for you to have an air leak, because ultimately all of this is connected. So if there's an air leak in one of those analog lines, well, you're going to ultimately end up with a leak in your bag. Now, the lines are super small that are in the analog style setup, but the digital one is definitely a real nice upgrade and something to consider. So aside from the brain and the control pack operating what's happening with the solenoids, that's pretty much it. You've got plug and play for power, ground, and that goes for, it's already plumbed if you have a secondary compressor, so you can plumb that in too if you want. You have your pressure switch connector, and then you have ignition and constant 12 volt power for the electronics here. And you have a bunch of grounds that are fused, which grounds are always really important. Now there's a couple wires that are not being used here, and that's these guys. And they are also labeled each corner. And this is if you were going to run level sensors or ride height sensors, that's automatically going to level out your car, tell you how low or how high your suspension is set up. But we do not have level sensors or ride height sensors in this application, so these are just going to get tucked up and out of the way. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed the little rundown. I know Kazil has gone through this. His AirTech setup was a little bit different, but similar in very many ways. And like I said, it's pretty straightforward, nothing that's overly complicated. The hardest part is probably just swapping out and getting your suspension and everything in the car, and then running your lines and getting the plumbing right. The wiring, guys, is literally ignition, constant 12 volt, and ground. That's pretty much all it is. And you've already got fuses and everything else pre-wired and good to go. In this case, I don't have a board or anything. I wasn't 100% sure where this is all going to get situated or laid out. You can see you got our one airline already running here. So I think I'll be taking out the rear seat, whatever you call them, support brackets, because this car is going to be running a rear seat delete. I'm hoping I can get the air tank and the compressor and the solenoids hiding underneath the rear seat delete here. So I'm going to go ahead, pull these brackets out, and then we'll start placing stuff on the inside. And from there, once we know where we want everything to live, then we can start building a panel and build things out so it's all sitting the way that we want. So doing the passenger side line routing, you can see here's the rubber grommet for the antenna. And normally there's a little metal guy that holds the grommet onto the wire kind of in this metal portion. So I snipped that off, cut a little hole through the top or the bottom side of the grommet that could allow me to get the airline through. And I pulled this metal stuff out. So what that does is kind of gives us a little bit, you know, because I don't want the airline rubbing against the metal part. Give us a pretty good buffer. I'm gonna pull some line through here. So we have enough. We can tuck that back in. I'll make sure that the grommet is seated accordingly. So that's going to do is make sure that we're up in the inner fender here, out of harm's way. And I'm actually going to go through this hole. There's a hole in the backside here that's rounded, which is kind of the perfect opportunity to be able to snake this through. So hold the GoPro with my knees. Let's see here. There. Okay. Boom. Got it. Okay. And what I can do is rotate that. Boom. Nice safe angle. Not sure what this tie wrap must have been for old wiring. That was in here. Holy. There we go. Cut this out earlier. Not sure what that was for. Maybe an old MSD box or something. But here we go, guys. Again, I'll make sure that this grommet is seated properly. Here's Cazel's hole that he used on his. I was actually giving him a hard time saying that I've never seen that hole on other cars, but you know what? I don't think that's where that push pin is that he was talking about, but that is an interesting hole regardless. So anyways, got our airline here, so our fronts are now hooked up. Not too bad. You can actually see some of the work in here, the fill and the patchwork, and body color paint, which makes the inside of the shaved bay look real nice. Going to run the rear line in, and that'll almost be it for plumbing. Look at that stance. This car is jacked up all sideways.